If I want to determine the fraction on this arrow, okay, let's count the number of spaces. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 out of 10. Means what? So our fraction now is 5 tenths. In the decimal form, 5 tenths. We want to determine this arrow, the fraction on this arrow. Let's count the spaces. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 spaces out of what? Out of 10 spaces. So our fraction now is what? Is 8 tenths, or in the decimal form is 8 tenths. Look at the second number line now. Start with what? With 20 hundredths. Pay attention. We have 20 hundredths means this. Yes, this number line 4 hundredths, not tenths. And end with what? Yes, 30 hundredths. Also, it is divided onto what? How many spaces? Yes, if you count them, you will find them 10 spaces. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, to determine the first arrow, okay, the fraction of the first arrow, let's count. Yes, how many spaces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 spaces to reach the first arrow. So 5 spaces out of what? Out of 10 spaces. So we have 20. After 20 is what? Is 1. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. So our fraction now is 25 hundredths. Let's determine the fraction on this what? On this arrow. Now we have 20 on this line. Let's count the spaces now. 21 hundredths, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So 28 hundredths, 28 hundredths, and 28 hundredths in the decimal form. Okay, look at this example. Yes, this number line for what? For hundredths or tenths? Yes, start with 0 and end with what? With 1. So this number line for tenths. We want to get this arrow, okay? To determine the fraction on this arrow. Let's count the spaces. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have this fraction is what? Is 4 tenths. We write it as a fraction 4 over 10, 4 tenths, or 0.4 in a decimal form. Look at this example. Start with 0, end with what? With 1. So this number line 4 tenths also. So we want to get the fraction, okay, or a decimal on this line, on this arrow. Let's count the spaces. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 tenths. In the fractional form, it will be 6 tenths, or in the decimal form, it will be 0.6, 6 tenths. Look at this example. This number line for what? For tenths or hundredths, start with 10 hundredths. So yes, this number line for hundredths. We want to determine the fraction on this arrow. Let's count. This one after what? After 10 hundredths. So this line is 11 hundredths, 12 hundredths, 13 hundredths, 14 hundredths, 15 hundredths, 16 hundredths, 17 hundredths. We write it as a fraction 17 over 100, 17 hundredths, or 0.17, 17 hundredths as a decimal. Look at the last example now. This number line starts with what? Start with 90 hundredths. So this number line for hundredths. Okay, now let's determine the fraction or a decimal on this arrow. How many spaces? After 90 is what? 91 hundredths. Okay, after 90 hundredths is 91 hundredths. 92 hundredths. So this arrow on what? 92 hundredths. In the fractional form, 92 over 100, 92 hundredths, or 0.92, 92 hundredths. Now guys, let's solve some examples. Write each add a fraction or a decimal, as a decimal or a fraction. Number 1, 1/10. 1/10 is a decimal. Now we want to rename it as a fraction, so it will be 1/10. Number 2, 37 hundredths. Yes, 37 hundredths is a fraction, so we want to rename it as a decimal. So now write 37, and the decimal place is 2 digits, hundredths. So 1, 2, and put the decimal place. Okay, the decimal point after 2 digits. We have hundredths, so 37 hundredths. Number 3, 7/10. Yes, it's a fraction. Now we want to rename it as a decimal. We want to rename it as a decimal. So it will be, put 7, and we have tenths. The decimal place is 1 digit, so put the decimal point here, 1 after 1 digit. So it will be 7/10. Example number 4, 60 hundredths. Now we have a fraction. Let's rename it as what? As a decimal. Yes. Now put 60, then the decimal place is 2 digits. So the decimal point after 2 digits from the right. So it will be 60 hundredths in the decimal form. Number 5, 9 hundredths. Yes, in a decimal form. Now we want to rename it as what? As a fraction. So it will be 9 over what? Hundredths. So over 100. It will be 9 hundredths in a fraction. Yes, form. In a form of a fraction. Number 6, 3 hundredths. Yes, in the form of a fraction. Let's rename it as what? As a decimal. Put 3. The decimal point is 2 digits, but we have 1 digit number, 3. So put 0 and put the decimal. In the decimal form, it's 3 hundredths. Another example. Rename as a fraction in what? In a simplest form. In a simplest form. Be attention, okay? Now we have a decimal, 5/10. 5/10. Let's rename it as a fraction. Now 5/10, it will be 5/10 in the form of a fraction. Okay, but he asked you to put it in the simplest form, so we will divide up and down over what? GCF of 5 and 10 over the greatest common factor of 5 and 10. What is the GCF of 5 and 10? Yes, 5. 5 over 5 equals 1, and 10 over 5 equals 2. So our fraction in simplest form, it will be 1/2. Okay? Number 2, 6/10. Yes, let's put it at the form of a fraction. Let's rename it as a fraction now. It will be 6/10. Okay? GCF. What is the GCF of 6 and 10? Yes, 2. So 6 over 2 equals 3. And 10 over 2 equals 5. So our fraction now equals 3/5 in the simplest form. Number 3, 75 hundredths. Let's rename it as a fraction now. Yes, it will be 75 hundredths. Okay? And the GCF of 75 and 100 is what? Yes, is 25. 75 over 25 equals 3. And 100 over 25 equals, yes, equals 4. So now we have our fraction in simplest form is 3 over 4. 3/4. Number 4. 30 hundredths. Add a fraction, it will be 30 hundredths. Let's simplify. We can cancel 0 with 0. It will be 3 tenths. Is it in simplest form? Yes, it is in simplest form. Why? Because the GCF of 3 and 10 is 1. Okay, is 1. So it is in simplest form. Number 5, 23 hundredths. It will be 23 hundredths as a fraction. Okay? Then get GCF of 23 and 100, it will be 1. So 23 hundredths is in simplest form. The last example. Are the following decimals equivalent? Write yes or no. Number 1. 60 tenths and 60 hundredths. Are the equivalent? We know that 6 tenths equals 60 hundredths. We know that 60 tenths equivalent to what? 60 hundredths. So they are equivalent. So tell him yes, they are equivalent. Number 2. Are 10 hundredths and 1/10 equivalent? We know that 1/10 equals 10 hundredths. So they are equivalent. So yes. Number 3. 7 tenths and 7 hundredths. Are the equivalent? 7 tenths and 7 hundredths. 7 hundredths. We know that 7 tenths equals 70 hundredths. Pay attention, 70, not 7. So it is wrong. So no, they are not equivalent. Number 4. 2 hundredths and 2 tenths. 2 hundredths and 2 tenths. Are the equivalent? We know that 2 hundredths equals 20 equals, we know that 2 tenths equals 20 hundredths. So it is wrong. So no, they are not equivalent. Number 5. 40 hundredths and 4 tenths. Are the equivalent? We know that 4 tenths equals 40 hundredths. So yes, they are equivalent. So tell him yes. Now we finished our lesson. Thank you. Goodbye.